Welcome to the final session for Friday. This is Building Structures for Belonging and Engagement. This is meant to be an engagement with the audience and a discussion and a strategy session. At the end of it, it would be nice if we have some fresh notes and ideas and some ways forward for a very specific problem that we are addressing. And the way I would like to begin is by introducing the folks who will be leading the discussion, but I mean leading somewhat loosely because we want your input. And we will start with María González from the University of Houston.
I'm Maria Gonzalez. I teach English at the University of Houston. I'm the faculty advisor to the Student Gay and Lesbian organization and the lesbian and bisexual trans women's sorority.
And as part of your introduction, could you also give us just a quick rundown on what happened at the University of Houston and sort of why we're here right now?
Sure. In 2023, the Texas legislature and the governor signed Senate Bill 17, which was basically an anti-DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion bill that specifically identified sexual orientation and gender identity as part of things that cannot be supported by the university, specifically within its students affairs, student support offices. The curriculum was cut out. The curriculum was not challenged. So, and research was not challenged. So the academic side was protected. I teach gay and lesbian literature in the English department, and I will be teaching gay and lesbian literature in the fall of 2024. But our LGBT Resource Center office and our Diversity and Inclusion office were wiped. On September 1, those offices disappeared and their web pages disappeared, and all diversity statements were removed from their pages for the college, the departments, university-wide. And we no longer have in student affairs a supportive LGBTQ office or a diversity and inclusion office. And we've been working very hard to push back on that.
Thank you. My name is William Langston, and I'm a psychology professor here at MTSU. I am the faculty advisor for the LGBTQ+ student organization on campus called MTSU Lambda Association. We are one of the oldest continuously operating LGBTQ+ student organizations in the state, and I've been the faculty advisor since 2002, so longer than most of our current members have been on this earth, which is hard to believe. My interest in this is mostly on the student affairs side. One of the stated purposes for the law in Texas, at least in the media, was that we've had DEI offices for 20 years, and we never moved the needle on faculty diversity. So what's the point in having DEI offices? We should just get rid of them if they can't bring about faculty diversity. Of course, you might ask the question, well, then what is the plan to bring that about if that's the stated goal? But one of my concerns is that part of the reason it's hard to move the needle on faculty is that there is no way anyone can hire people who don't exist. And one of the ways that we make more faculty available to be hired in the first place is support students who might not see themselves in that role. And a lot of the things that were removed at the University of Houston, which I should say is my alma mater and part of why I am so in touch with what happens there. I prepared to send in my donation this year, and the Pride Center wasn't there. And I said, why can't I give them money? And then I found out that it had been disbanded. Much to my surprise, no alumni were involved in any of the discussions of what was happening, and no announcements were made. It was a little disheartening to see the way they handled it at the end. But if we have student supports, then we can help students to be successful in college. And if we can help our students to be successful in college, we can also help point them at careers that maybe someday will help us to have a faculty who represents the students that go to the university and that they see themselves reflected in. But that work starts at the beginning. And if you say you've had 20 years and you haven't changed the world, it's like it takes a long time to build those support structures to make students see themselves in these roles and to get them back to being faculty again. And if you want to have a sincere conversation about how to achieve that goal, we can have it, but this is a rather blunt instrument to make it so. And I just have one more like scene setting piece before we launch into this. The university was not built for everyone. It was built for a very specific kind of person who was the kind of person who went to college at the time it was built. And those were mostly cisgender, heterosexual white men. And those people feel very comfortable here, but a lot of other people feel like they're guests in somebody else's house where maybe they're not even that welcome. I know as recently as 2 years ago, a student said during a Lambda meeting, well, do you think that they would let us put a sign on their board? And I said, why don't you say our board? You're paying tuition, you're a student here. And they said, I am a member of this community. It never occurred to me because of the way I felt like an outsider. Yesterday, somebody pointed out to me that on Monday, one of our top ranking administrators sent an email that said, I hope you enjoyed the holiday. And she said, since I'm not a Christian, I found it interesting that he just assumed everyone had celebrated that holiday. And when people say, well, calm down, it's not a big deal. The University of Tennessee diversity funding was pulled because they said, why don't you say happy holidays instead of Merry Christmas? It's more inclusive. And some folks in the legislature lost their minds over the idea of saying happy holidays. And Eid is Wednesday next week. I'm curious to see if any of our top administrators will wish everybody a happy holiday. And what the response will be from the folks who didn't care about the happy holiday on Monday, if on Thursday somebody sends an email saying, I hope you enjoyed your holiday. I'm pretty, I don't want to be mean, but I'm very confident that the reception will be very different. And it's all part of what I'm saying is we build support networks for students so that everyone realizes this university was built for you. You belong here and you matter. And our LGBTQ plus students are here, even if some people think they don't belong here or they don't exist. And so our mission today is to ask the question, I'm sorry, here's a photograph of the, it's so sad because there's boxes in the LGBTQ plus center. The sodas just break my heart because you know that like somebody bought some sodas for the students to enjoy and then they had to pack them up and move them out when they cleaned out the office one day and the students show up and there's just a sign on the door that says permanently closed. No, like here's what happened, just it's gone. What I'd like to do is begin by identifying resource needs. And then I want to review the law. And then I want to talk about ways that we can obey the law and continue to meet the resource needs of our students to make sure that we achieve the goal that we all share, which is we want students to have access to the institution. We want them to be retained, to persist towards graduation, and we want them to get a degree. And one of the missions of this conference is also to get a job. So I'm gonna put up some resources. Dr. González said that they took down all the web pages for diversity, but interestingly enough, the SGA had duplicated the University of Houston webpage for the center. And so I stole this. I'd like, if you don't mind, just addressing some of what these things were at the university and the role that they played in student success.
Would love to. Okay, UHL LGBTQ plus resources. Mentorship. This was basically identifying either senior students, graduate students, sometimes even staff and faculty. If you were expressing interest in something, and you were part of the LGBT community, and you said, hey, I like what, for example, at that point in time, one of our program officers at the resource center, she was very active, and she was teaching people how to be basically activists. And they would just line up to work with her. I one time had a student, I was contacted because a student was interested in getting into grad school, not in English, which was fine, but, and I said, no problem, send them over, or, we'll just, I'll get there. But yeah, mentorship, opportunities to meet people who have been at the University of Houston a long time. We're a campus of over 47,000 students. So helping navigate this large campus on all kinds of levels, from finding tutors in advanced math to you're transitioning and you need voice work. Our speech and communications department has ways that you can work on your voice. I mean, that's what, but how would you know that unless you studied an endless web page, which doesn't work? So mentorship, rainbow chats. Rainbow chats would usually identify interest groups. Let's say you're transitioning once a month, usually once a month, but sometimes a couple of times a month. There was one afternoon where you could head over to the resource center and sit down and talk with like-minded people who were in the midst of that. Maybe you were one of the ones that a student of mine identified for me was Children of Alcoholics group that was LGBT supportive. They would meet. Survivors of abuse, they would meet. Individuals who are just coming out. I mean, it's all kinds of things. Rainbow chats. And what they had was basically usually a monthly informal gathering where like-minded people would gather around at the lounge area and just get to know each other. Cougar Ally training. This was for the faculty and staff. Basically, how to be an ally, actually, an advocate and a committed activist of the LGBTQ plus community. And that was training that our human resources office would advertise, and the resource center would provide the opportunities. It could be as the Cougar Ally training, the initial seminar was about a half day. And then there was always some sort of Cougar Ally training too, and follow-ups. And what was wonderful is you got this nice decal that basically said Cougar Ally, so that students knew that you were a safe person to talk to. Educational articles and resources. I mean, all, just information of all kinds. That was a running bibliography. And then LGBTQ plus scholarships. That's, as you can imagine, there were specific opportunities, scholarships created for our LGBTQ plus community. But what was also included with that was help in filling out these scholarship forms and finding even more specialized scholarships that clearly were directed to you. I mean, it included workshops and then emergency aid. We know many of our students have food scarcity. a student by definition is supposed to be poor, but having opportunities to be able to get assistance. More than once, we have had students, because they came out, get thrown out of their home. And the emergency aid was to either get them some immediate support, but also get them housing, get them to a safe place, make sure there was ways to address crises. Emergency aid could also be, I lost a partner, a family member. I lost my dog. I mean, you want someone to talk to. And, I mean, God bless our counseling center, but that place is packed. When you got 47,000 students, you can't, get an appointment right now. So those were just some of the resources that the resource center had. It really was a place. When anybody comes onto a campus of 47,000 students, you look for communities of like-mindedness. Every time I would get a phone call from a journalist about the closing of our resource center, I would always ask them, when you went to school, where did you hang out? Did you hang out in your department? Were you hanging out with journalism majors? Where was a place? That's what the resource center was all about. A community that you knew would accept you and provide individuals who were interested in many of the same things you had. What was also in the resource center, and it breaks my heart, were endless books, educational articles and research books, videos, well, CDs, or as things were more and more digitized, ways to download things. But, I mean, there was a big bowl of, because of condoms. So, I mean, not just LGBT students, I can assure you, would come by and grab those. I was told half the campus stopped by to pick up their condoms because it was also the Women's Resource Center. Feminine products, I mean, come on. They were free, available, and those things would just happen. So you needed a place you knew you could go grab stuff. Anyway, as you can imagine, I was as angry and heartbroken as anyone when they just shut it down. September 1st, without warning. And what happened, the way we found out about it, is someone had, quote, prematurely put up a sign in early August saying that the office was going to close on September 1. Well, it went out in a tweet or something, and I went and tracked people down and said, okay, what's going on? And everybody pulled out the same thing. SB 17. We have to close by January 1, 2024. But from top down, they got the news that they had to close September 1. It was top down, and they were just trying to do it as quietly as they could. Someone, being brave, said, I'm putting the sign up, and they put it up, and it was an active challenge. And I'm glad our administrators protected the person who put that sign up and just simply said it was premature and left it at that. Anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
So then you put the sign up is what we're taking from that.
It wasn't me, but I
Thank you.
know who did it.
I think you raised some very important points, and I'm going to look at some MTSU resources on the next slide. But I want to just review a couple of points you raised. With modern student affairs, our goal is to make sure all of our students are successful. And sometimes that means looking at the challenges students face that are particular to some students, but maybe not all. And familial alienation is a major problem for LGBTQ plus students because they get to college, they want to come out, they want to finally be the person they are, and their families find out, and suddenly they're out on their ear with no money, no resources, no home to go back to, no family, no support. And the university can say, well, so survival of the fittest, you're one of the ones that didn't make it, or we can try to be there to help them. And part of that is the emotional journey of what to do when your life is shattered at the moment when you're trying to be your true self. And mentorship and rainbow chats are essential for that. Financial support is essential for that. Somebody to talk to who can help you be emancipated so you don't have to have your parents fill out your FAFSA for you is essential for that. And without those services, a lot of those students aren't going to make it. And there's no other way to put that, right? Without somebody saying these are the specific challenges these students are going to face, there's no way to fix that. And a center is a very handy way to guarantee that those students find the services that they need and find a person who can link them to all of it at once. And so as we go through this with the MTSU resources, we have a lot of the things that are on this first page, so I mostly just hit a few extra points. But the person goes to counseling services, and the counseling services is great at helping them through the emotional trauma, but they may not know about a program in the financial aid office or in our academic one-stop. The foster care person can also help with youth who are being emancipated from their families and help them in the same way to get their FAFSAs filled out and stay in college and find places to live. And a center is a one-stop shop for that. And by saying we don't believe we should single students out, we didn't make it better for anybody, but we made it harder for a lot of people. So I will just say an additional resource we do have at MTSU, and you still have at U of H if you are very lucky and Google pulls up some of the archive pages that they haven't taken down yet. We have a nice LGBT resource page, mtcu.edu/LGBT. We have very supportive counseling services, and we have really good support services in student affairs that, because they are not currently in line with any particular center, will be relatively legislation proof. They are for everyone, but the people there do have safe zone training, is what we call your Cougar Ally. And their safe zone training makes them prepared if an LGBTQ plus student comes. But if we weren't allowed to do those trainings, then we'd be back to square one on that too. So now for the audience, where you see the chat box, that's when we would like for your input. So these are, I'm just going to flash back again. These are some of the resources that we've discussed, and I want to know, as we build forward, what else you think should be on the list. And I will caution you, I forgot to bring any paper or pencils or my laptop I was typing in earlier. So if anyone wants to scribe, that would be helpful. So the microphone's out there. Anybody have anything that we've overlooked?
Will, can I mention one other thing?
It can be on your wish list. It doesn't have to be something that you have.
Will, can I mention one
Maria, is there
other?
anything on your list?
I do want to point something out, Will. One of the things that happened when we lost our diversity and inclusion office was we had what was part of the diversity and inclusion office included, specifically ethnic and race-based support services. Our Asian, South Asian organizations would meet there. Our Black student union group would meet down there. But also our veterans support services were part of the diversity and inclusion. Our veterans have specific needs and requirements that disappeared with our DEI office that's now gone. And that needs to be built back up again. And it's just, I mean, I'm glad the Women's Resource Center is there, because a lot of things have been pushed over there that were in different offices. But, you know, the Women's Resource Center, you don't automatically think, veterans support place. I mean, that's one of the big challenges that has happened with this, you know, just wiping out of DEI is a whole lot of diverse support of diverse identities that our students bring in are now not available. And we're trying very hard to find other ways to support our students and make sure everyone has access to it. But honest, veterans, women, every student comes onto this campus with very different needs and requirements. And we are trying to make it as accessible to as many as possible.
I would expect nothing less from my alma mater. I appreciate you saying that. Has anyone in the audience come up with something? Yes. Is it on? It might. Did you push the switch up?
Okay,
Okay.
now it's on.
Okay.
Thank you. I think a good segue from what Maria was offering is a need to have a portal of sorts where you can sort of drop in and sort of type in some keywords that would not only access all the possible resources on your campus, but also connect you to community-based resources. Because I think as public institutions become increasingly under fire for this type of work, DEI work, LGBTQ plus work, all things community engagement work, it seems is what's happening in Texas. It's going to be incumbent upon us to break down these silos that exist between gown and town. And so I think a portal of sorts would be a good step in the right direction.
Is there anything else? I'll repeat it. You could just say it. So the question was, would it be housed in a particular website or how would that be accessed?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Could build something within the university community and then just extend that beyond.
So the it would the answer was more or less it has to live somewhere. We could build it, but it would have to be in somebody's space. We can ask the question in a minute whether that would be consistent with the law, because I think that's an important part of that building a portal. Are we good on contributions? Okay, one more.
Is it on?
Mm-hmm.
First, I just wanted to thank Maria for sharing, insights about what the University of Houston is doing. So I'll just go ahead and state that those of us sitting at my table, we're actually from Dallas, Texas. So we're from Texas, from Dallas College specifically. So we were really looking forward to this discussion about SB 17 because we're currently living in the repercussions of what this looks like on our campuses. It's definitely made it difficult to operate. We're from a specific program focused on supporting LGBTQ students called Inclusive Excellence, which is not technically under DEI, but has, I don't know how you'd want to say it. It's left us a little bit unsure, what this means for us going forward. And how, we're gonna, move forward to provide the programs to students, provide that support. So it's really great to hear what Houston is doing to offer that support to students. I know you brought up having like a website or, maybe online resource to go. We've actually seen an interesting sort of backlash where they're still allowing us to provide supportive programs to LGBTQ students, but they have disbanded our website that provides information about our programs, events. They sort of dispersed it where it's really difficult to find information. So we're really kind of unsure how to move forward from here. But it's really great to hear, that other states care. We're all trying to figure out, how we can best support students going forward, and we just wanted to add that contribution.
Thank you. I mean, it's off topic a bit, but stories from the trenches. The websites tend to be very protected by institutions. When Dr. McPhee came to MTSU, it was a relatively simple thing to get him to add sexual orientation to our non-discrimination policy, but it took 13 years to get it put on the website for a variety of sources of resistance. So a portal is great, but I am concerned we will explore whether that's legal. And I do want to say it came up again, and I'm going to belabor this point because I think a lot of folks who are not part of the 21st Century University just do not get what we do and what our students' needs are, and our goal of graduating all of the people that come through our doors and getting them jobs. They're paying a lot of money. They ought to finish. But veterans need services that are unique to veterans. We have a veterans center here, luckily, that would not be probably caught under the law because it's a separate thing. But veterans' families have access to funds that they need help accessing. And during deployments, they need all kinds of social supports and emotional supports. And it's odd how people, when you say that, they're like, well, that makes sense. And I totally support that. And you say, and our LGBTQ plus students, like, whoa, hold up now. And it's like, but all of our students need help. And luckily for all of us, I forgot to bring the laptop up here with the notes, but I've been copying out a lot of the things that are being said about this conference in real time on the Facebooks for the county and the city. And another reason LGBTQ plus students need extra support is if you live in a town where people are willing to say the things that I'm not going to be able to read to you now, fortunately, it's hard. And it is a reason why you might need some more love and support than a student who's not LGBTQ plus, having to hear that everywhere you go. Okay, so that was the resource needs. That's our first step, and we have a nice list now. The second thing, here's the fun part. Let's review the law. I think Dr. González, I'm gonna, you're in Texas, you've been through it, but I made the PowerPoint. So I will let you decide who wants to talk about it. But I do want to say this. I think both of us could agree that they ought to have to run it through Turnitin. And if you've plagiarized more than 90% of the law, then it gets kicked back. You can't turn it in. And you fail the class and you have to write your own bill going forward. So would you like to do the review?
I'm sorry, there were some technical difficulties on my end. So and I couldn't hear what you were saying. Could you say that again?
I was asking if you'd like me to review the law part or if you'd like to go over it as a
No,
person who's
you go
affected by
ahead.
it directly.
I'm having some technical difficulties on my end.
This is to Trent. Can you send a message to turn on captioning? Maybe that'll help. I guess I could. I will, while we wait to see if we can get that audio to go, I will just start to review some of the outline of the law in Texas. So the law begins by defining what diversity, equity, inclusion office is, and then it forbids the existence of diversity, equity, inclusion offices and establishes disciplinary procedures, including folks who break the law can be terminated for violating the law. As was noted, a lot of things are covered besides the office, including asking applicants to put in diversity statements. So a lot of times when you apply for a faculty position, you're asked to submit a diversity statement. And for even people who say, well, I don't have anything to do with diversity, what does it affect me? It makes them think about it, and that's a useful tool. No required trainings are allowed and no special treatment. And the definition of that is reasonably broad. And now that we've put veterans in the conversation, I'm not sure if they would be exempt from that. It might need to say that explicitly. Dr. Gonzalez, are you able to hear me now or read what I'm saying?
Yes, I got it now. Thank you.
Okay. Would you like to do the exclusions part? You mentioned this before, but I think this is a significant piece of it.
Yeah, this is especially important. The exclusions, these areas are not under this law. That's for purposes of grants and compliances. So our compliance rules, or if we're submitting for grants, we can continue to talk about diversity, about those populations. That's left out. Academic course instruction. So basically, our gay and lesbian literature courses, our Mexican American academic courses, African American studies, Asian American studies. Those courses stay in. Our LGBT minor stays in. Our graduate degree in gender and sexuality continues to exist. Our scholarly research, they promise that what those of us who do DEI, I'm an expert on Mexican American literature, Chicana writers, Chicanx queer writers. They haven't touched that. And I always tell my colleagues, double down, do more of it. That's why they created this law. And here's the important one. Student organizations, they were, thank God, cut out. So when our LGBT Resource Center closed, it was our student organizations that took the lead in trying to recover much of what we did. In fact, it is our student organization that is now hosting the Lavender graduation. You know, a more intimate, private experience for our LGBT community. The academic side, women, gender, and sexuality department also has a separate graduation ceremony. That is not, you know, everybody breaks up their graduations because, you know, 47,000 students on this campus. But the student organizations took the lead and they're hosting this year's Lavender graduation. But the Women, Gender, and Sexuality department has its own little graduation ceremony. And one of the things we told reporters is come to both of them so you can see the difference of when the university supports you and when the university doesn't support you. Anyway, student organizations are really important because it is through our student organizations that we've been able to hang on to at least some of the programming that the LGBT Resource Center used to run.
I agree about the student organizations being super important. Here is another list of exclusions, and it's surprisingly long, and I think it's an important part of the bill if you'd like to keep going.
Sure. Guest speakers. We still can invite individuals who address race, sexuality, ethnicity, class onto our campus, thank God. Programs to enhance student academic achievement or outcomes. You know, we're still debating what that exactly means. But for example, specific tutoring, targeting first-gen students, for example. Those programs seem to be okay. we're still, in fact, we're still in conversations with the general counsel about some of those programs. When, you know, we have, targeted tutoring. I mean, they seem to not have any problems with the tutoring for our specific athletes. I'm not surprised. Data collection. You can still gather information based on race, ethnicity, class. Well, we're not good at collecting diverse class data collection. But the data collection, you know, I mean, male, female, sexual orientation, gender identity, student affairs can still ask, okay, how many students are LGBTQ if they're doing it? Student affairs has been very cautious. They've pulled back on some of that data collection, but I keep pushing them and saying, no, 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 you need to find out what our student body looks like. And then student recruitment. You know, I used to be able to go and, you know, just bring a UH brochure and say, and go to within the community and just say, look, the University of Houston used to be a top LGBTQ plus supportive campus. I can't quite seem able to do that, even though student recruitment is still cut out. But the university's gotten very cautious about some of us going out there and recruiting students. But supposedly we can still recruit students based on diverse identities. Okay.
It feels especially odd and unfair to recruit students and then abandon them once they get to the campus by pulling away all the resources after you know who you're recruiting and why, and you're doing it on purpose. And right now we're in an enrollment slump, and a lot of folks are competing very hard for students that I know MTSU has some current concerns that some of our competitors might not be ready to serve the student population that they're trying to take from us. And recruiting people and then not being ready for them is, in my opinion, a very unfair thing to do, because you're going to saddle them with a lot of college debt and no degree, and that's just not right. The next question is what can be done within the law for discussion point, and I want to start with what we're doing right this minute, because guest speakers and programs to enhance student academic achievement or outcomes. I'm not a lawyer. Maria, I don't believe you're a lawyer. But how's about your opinion on what we're doing this conference? Do you think this would be legal in Texas?
No. No, because you all specifically identify LGBTQ. And in fact, I'm treasurer of the Texas Transgender Non-Discrimination Scholars. And we were scheduled to go to one of the schools, A&M Commerce outside of Dallas, this year. But it's part of the public school, part of the state of Texas that owns it. So when the individuals who had invited us last year approached their campus this fall, as we began the process, they said no. The Texas Transgender Non-Discrimination Summit cannot be here. They did say that we could be there if a student organization was the main sponsor, as opposed to, at that, it was individuals who were working with both the library and student affairs. But they, scholarly organizations are supposed to be able to be invited onto campus, and it should be one of the exclusions. But the real challenge is convincing the university general counsel, the campus lawyers, and they are some of the most cautious individuals I have ever met. They are so risk adverse that they will bend over backwards not to do something. So, I mean, we tried to explain this to it was A&M System General Counsel, that it was a scholarly program, Texas Transgender Non-Discrimination Scholars. That's in our title. We would be doing a 2-day conference, and they were just being so cautious, and for good reason, because we just heard this past week that the state senator who wrote SB 17, a guy named Crichton, I think, basically announced that he was going to go do his exploration to make sure that every school in the state of Texas was following the law. And the University of Texas at A&M just fired a lot of people in their DI office to prove that they are within the law. That atmosphere is where the pushback has to occur. The students are terrific, and most of the support staff, they're amazing. They want to help. But the challenge is upper administration is scared to death of a legislature that holds purse strings. And that's the real challenge.
I like to ask the question, what percentage of the money that this university brings in comes from the students and what percent comes from the legislature? And you get 1 vote per dollar. So maybe we should be a little less afraid of the legislature and they can keep their 8%. And the students should have some sway since they're the ones paying the bills. So we've got a Texas group over here, and I've heard some rumbling out of that table. And so I want to throw it over to you. What can be done within the law? And the framing of this is to look at some of these things we talked about before and ask the question, how do we keep these things? So do y'all have any thoughts or ideas that you'd like to bring forward?
Okay, so I am running for president of our Student Government Association for one of the campuses of Dallas College. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is implement alternative DEI programs. So I can really use some guidance on how to even navigate that within the law to still make sure that we're giving our demographics and people like us that representation that they need and support.
Sorry, I was just trying to note that down as it came in so I would remember it. So alternative DEI programs. So let me put this up. So we have mentorship rainbow chats and the web page, and the question was who can maintain these, which came up with the idea of a portal. Are you suggesting some of the other DEI activities that got taken away?
Yes.
Okay, and the question sort of how can we rebuild some of these things? Because I do have an answer from the University of Houston. Geez, his name just went out of my head. I talked to one of your colleagues, Maria, in the A.D. Bruce Religion Center. Do you, it's not Chuck, is it?
Reverend Charles.
Yes. Yeah, sorry,
Reverend Charles.
Charles. We're throwing the tech guy for a loop by going back and forth. I'm gonna throw it to you and let you answer this. But he had some very clever ideas about rebuilding some of it through their religion center, at the University of Houston. So that's at least one option, if you'd like to talk about that.
Okay, yeah, the, I mean, the student organizations had to take the lead. And we did our best to invite as many people as we could to get the word out that our LGBT Resource Center was closing down and we needed all hands on deck to give us a hand. The A.D. Bruce Religion Center basically houses all the theological leaders on our campus. And many of them are welcoming and affirming, and they are not affected by this law because they get their resources from a different place. And so they're taking up some of these things. They have offered to house the rainbow chats, basically open up their space so that students can gather there. But one of the big things that we invented years ago was just a basic welcome back to campus ice cream social. And the religion, and originally that was where we had it. It was a small LGBT religion center, ice cream social, just so that, more thing else, the religion center wanted to show that it was welcoming and affirming. Well, the resource center took it over and it just got bigger and bigger, and it had to be moved to the student center into a big giant banquet room. So this little ice cream social turned into a big event. The last time we had it was August 31, the day before it got closed down. We had this giant ice cream social where over 400 students showed up, and staff and faculty, as we said goodbye. And the welcoming and affirming pastors, priests, rabbis, imams basically said, we're going to do the ice cream social next year. And they're scheduled for it. The other, and like I said, they're trying to get the word out. They put up the rainbow flag over in the religion center. So, so you can see that it's a welcoming and affirming place. But the other group that was also really, really important to help us is the UH LGBT Alumni Organization, the one you belong to, Dr. Langston. They stepped up. And so one of the curious things that happened is the president of the student LGBT group was, by sheer coincidence, last summer looking for an internship and approached me about doing an internship, doing some work with our LGBT archive. Our library has a Houston LGBT archive, and she was going to do some work there. But my recommendation was, no, you're the president of the student group. You are now the liaison to the UH alumni group, and they have to start taking some of this on. And the UH alumni group has agreed to attempt to create a web page where we can transfer a lot of the resources that we lost. So the alumni group in coordination with the student group. In fact, it is the student group that is sponsoring Lavender graduation with the student group is putting on the event, but it is being sponsored by the alumni group. And they had to word it in a certain way so that they could do it, so that the student organization could get some monies as an activity but the alumni organization could also come in and fund it as well. Honest, getting to know your university general counsel, your university attorney on a first name basis, bring them chocolate. I don't care what you do, but you need them, and you need to be able to give them a call and say, okay, can we do this? Here's the other thing. The internship that I had this student start and organize for last fall, the first thing I said is, you'll get course credit for this, but you're going to learn to be an activist. And I said, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to organize a protest. And that's a learning project. This year, she needed an independent studies because she's graduating. She needed 3 hours and it was an elective. And I said, great, I'll direct it. Once again, basically, a big chunk of it is just fielding all these journalists and reporters who want quotes. And I just send them to her. I said, your job is to be familiar with the SB 17, figure out what we can and can't do, and report to the reporters, as well as help organize Lavender graduation, help the Bruce Religion Center get rainbow chats going. The other thing I did is, by sheer coincidence, the Harris County, which Houston is in Harris County, created an LGBT task force for the county. And what I've asked the county to do is, they have all these service centers, senior centers. In fact, they have over 10 senior centers. And I have asked them to create LGBT resource centers in their senior centers. We're working on it. You know, since we can't have an LGBT resource center at the University of Houston, fine. We'll try to put them in all the Harris County resource centers in the county. We're still working on that. We'll see. I basically asked, what can you guys just put kiosk information in all these multi-purpose centers and county service centers where LGBT resource information can be put in? And they're looking at it. The important thing is to look to offices off campus who you know will be supportive and can take on some of these things. A portal. The UH Alumni Organization is trying to get the website going. Still working on that. But off-campus organizations, they now need to become partners with the student groups, but you need to be introduced to them. And that's one of the things I'm having my student do for her independent studies. Her job is to identify in offices at U of H that are supportive and welcoming to our community. Who are the contact persons? If you are trying to do something, I need that on a list, and how to get something through the system. Because that's what the resource center used to do. You wanted to hold a rally on campus. Well, it's a bureaucratic nightmare. So you need to go somewhere and ask someone, so how do I do this? And those are the kinds of things I'm trying to get her to record, document, and then we're going to try to get these into different offices, put them on kiosks, get a web page going. Anyway, you know, making friends with the student organizations and off-campus organizations and LGBT alumni organizations and campus ministries, that's, you need coordination. And so my recommendation is You have students who are going to do independent studies and research experiences and internships, and that's their job, to coordinate and help pull these groups together.
And that, of course, would be consistent with the law. I do want to be respectful of our time, but I will say that a large part of my conversation with Charles Graves was about efforts to find community partners who are stakeholders in students' outcomes and futures. And that could be, at the University of Houston, it was the Religious Center has been very influential, but also stakeholders exist in the corporate world and in other community organizations. And you find those partners and you have to figure out how to bring a sort of public-private partnership to the campus so that the resources are stable for students in a way that the university would be if the university had it. But that might be your only option, given the current state of the law. For some of the things that a DEI office was doing, there might not be any way to go about it. Maybe we'll take one more quick question and then we'll wrap it up, if there is one more. Okay.
Yes, how do we connect with her? That's my question.
Oh, no. That's my secret resource.
You gotta share.
I'm not on, but